So, here we are, sort of dovetailing into the German battleship, this Scharnhorst that I did recently. We have the Arado, so it's AR196A2/A3, and here you can see on the box cover it's getting launched off the side of a German battleship. So, it's nice to jump scale like that, because in the ship itself, this is a spec. I'm going to show how big the ship is, because here we are with 1/72nd, and it's an Airfix. It's a bit of a reissue. I never made this as a kid, but here it is now at last, and there we are with the two types you can have. And I've done a bit of a paint up, just taking the little fellas off the sprue to give them a bit more detail. But we've got these bits and pieces. Oh no, they clip together. The undersides of the floats clip onto the body rather nicely. We'll glue them. So that's our basics. And that's what we're going to work with. Very interesting. I'm going to have to reach over and get the instructions. The box art has the typical German camouflage of green on green, but the instructions show both variants having grey with green over, which is understandable because you're out over the sea on this one and sitting on a grey battleship. So an interesting slight variation there. Oops, it's nearly done. That really did come together really fast. You kind of needed to get them all done, all the parts done, because things would be just floating around, or stuff won't quite fit. I suppose I could have left the tail, but the tail itself posed an interesting challenge, because although you have the two tail planes, you have a single control surface. So aileron, oh dear, get the old teenage memory back. I think it's an aileron, isn't it? Anyway, so you've got to fit a single thing into two, which themselves are made up of two, so really you're fitting it into four. Then you've got to fit the whole thing into the fifth part, which is the aircraft, it's the fuselage itself. So you need a couple of pairs of hands, really. Anyway, we got there in the end. So, nearly done. Well, I say that. We've then got all the struts that hold the floats, and that's going to be almost as bad as a biplane, which I have been struggling with biplanes. So, yeah. Oh, look at that mould seam mark in this light all the way around. It's not nice, is it? Before all the contraptions and gantries go on underneath, it's worth saying that's a really nice little aircraft. What a neat little beauty. So anyway, wings and tail. Now, when I was talking about the tail, I distracted myself with talks of extra arms and things. The point being that when you put the tail on, and I've smothered it in glue at the moment, but I might actually take some of that off and then obviously paint over. But you've got to get these three pieces in, and then so on and so forth, so you're doing something like 5 in the end. But what they conveniently did is create a very large slot, and the rod that goes in the slot is much smaller, so you put the tail in at this end and then push it up along the slot, and that way it fits properly. And I hadn't done that in the earlier shot because I was going to show you how it's done, but I rambled off in some other direction and forgot, and put it down, glued it, and then thought, so here we are. There's me trying to be clever. Anyway, Nice looking little aircraft. Very big cockpit. By the way, I've decided to make this one, which pertains to the German battleship Bismarck, May 1941, which is great because I've just made the Scharnhorst, not the Bismarck. I think I saw the Bismarck in a box somewhere. One of those boxes that was full of things that are put away into a safe place, and never found again. So I might be on the trail of the Bismarck. Should have realised that. Anyway, that's the one. So suddenly I got to this level and some very interesting little things occurred with the canopy. First of all, they were all sitting on the sprue and it's a nice frame. That's fine. So I got some clippers, took them off after I'd done the basic paint job and left them overnight. Came back and this base framework, which runs across there as well, it's got this sort of frame to it, and that had warped, which was really weird. And then on this side, scrape. I tried earlier to get a good shot of this and it won't focus close enough, but there is where it was attached, and I'd used clippers. This isn't glue, this is probably 40 or 50 tiny little cracks, and that's on the outer canopy, the bit that slides, and they weren't there when I cut it, but they were there when I came back the next day. Very weird. And finally, what is odd is I've followed the canopy framework lines. That's fine, but on the illustrations on the box there's a lot more of them. I have stuck to this because it's there, because it's what they've given me. But it all means the canopy's all gone a bit wayward. Otherwise, I think it's going all right. Meanwhile, the floats are going fine. Really rather nice. Just got to get them onto the body, and they have quite large kind of lugs. I've got a feeling they're going to be a tight fit. Right, struts are on, and they went okay. A little bit of tidying up of the paintwork to do, but that's to be expected. So, it's all going alright. On the whole, I think, yeah, there we are. So far so good. One of the things that always fascinates me with these little aircraft that are on battleships and things like that is that they are catapulted off the ship. How exciting must that have been? Well, I can only imagine, basically. And I was having a read through the instructions, and well, not, you know, the right up at the beginning of the instructions, and it said that this was operated from battleships and so on, shipborne, and operated from coastal bases, and was involved in coastal reconnaissance and patrol. And it was employed in the, and I quote, anti-submarine and convoy escort, anti-submarine and convoy escort roles, and even for attacking the Whitleys of RAF Coastal Command. They're big uns, and I've got one to make somewhere, which I think I can lay my hands on quicker than I can the Bismarck, so you never know, we might be in luck with that eventually. And I was surprised to find that this was introduced in 1940, or this version of the aircraft was introduced in 1940, because it looks really rather older than that, and a lot of the aircraft that were upgraded from about 1940 often look quite different. So this one is sticking to its design, which suggests it's a very good design, really, doesn't it? Anyway, there we are. So I've finished the model, and I've given it a light coat of gloss varnish, which in many respects is a good thing to do. But unfortunately, I lost a couple of the very small transfers, and I rinsed out the brush and I looked everywhere, and they just appear to have gone to a completely different plane of existence. So there's a couple of tiny markings not there, particularly one on one of the floats, which is a shame. And also it so I put the varnish on, I put it to one side to dry off, and came back and a couple of the markings on the side of the fuselage had moved, and then the varnish had dried and I can't get them off. They're kind of the right way up and things, but they'd obviously gone with a brush stroke sideways, or that something like that happened. They looked all right when I did it, I'm sure. But anyway, just a couple have gone about 2 or 3 millimetres the wrong way, which is a... And I was chatting to one of my mates, and I was on the phone, he was a scientist, and I just went, blah blah blah. When I say scientist, he works at university and stuff. And mentioned the warped, or the slowly warping canopy, and he said, that sounds like a change of temperature. And I said, but I didn't get it too hot. And he said, no, everybody says that, change of temperature. Doesn't matter what temperature it was, it's what temperature it ended up being. And I thought, oh yeah, I put that on the windowsill. So, we live and learn.